Hold on. And we should be live. We are live.
Okay, thank you. Hi, good evening. So we're waiting to get a quorum, so we'll start very soon. Sorry for everyone's waiting for the public hearing. Hi, good evening. Yeah, we're good. Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. So this is Howard County Delegation public hearing. Tonight is February 5th, 2025, Wednesday. And we're sorry we're a little late, but we'll start right now. So tonight's agenda will focus on bond bills and some local bond initiative and some bills. So the order for the event is really focused on citizen first, and LBI second, and a single bill testimony, and then multiple bill testimony. So we have Musa had the timer, and our delegation administrator, Mr. Jeffrey, had the timer. So when timer is bomb up, so we'll call you timeout. And we'll start from Mr. Peter Framson. Please go ahead, Mr. Framson.
Before you start, can I just check with the delegation administrator to make sure we are live on YouTube?
We should be live on YouTube. Let me double check. We are live on YouTube. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Framson. You're on mute.
Good evening. My name is Peter Framson. I'm a resident of Howard County, Maryland, 1815 Marriottsville Road. I am both the president of the Howard County Iron Bridge Hounds, an association, an organization of fox chasers that uses the wildlands property at Annapolis Rock. And I'm also a resident who has horses, and for 7 or 8 months out of the year, I can be using Annapolis Rock for pleasure riding or hiking as well. So I know the park very, very well. What has been requested and what we would like very much to see happen is have the ability to have better access to the park for whether it's me on foot or me as part of an organized ride or us as a club or individuals riding on our own, be it on foot, on bicycle, or on horseback, that we need the ability to use some different kinds of equipment to get into the wildlands, to be able to have the opportunity to access all of the trails, number one. And then number two, to take the potential concern of an issue, an accident, deeper into the park, and how would somebody able to get in there and get somebody out. As president of Howard County Iron Bridge Hounds, I know that some years back, we had that kind of a situation. Deep into the park, meant several years back, somebody was injured and we needed to get the 4x4, the small mechanical vehicle in. We could get it in then because the parkland was more easily cleared at that point, and therefore was in a better position to help us with our problem. Unfortunately, today, that vehicle would not be able to get in. Being whether I'm on horseback, bicycle, or on foot, the ability to move to that park, which is beautiful. The bottom is beautiful. The water is gorgeous. Everything about it is terrific. I just want to make sure that we all have the opportunity to use it safely, number one, and if there's an issue, have the ability to be recovered, number two. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Framson. So you are supporting Bill HOCO 525, right?
I am.
Yeah, thank you. So our next speaker is Mr. Tom Newton. Please state your position on the bill. I think just when you started, that'd be helpful. Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Newton. You're on mute. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Tom Newton. I was born and raised in Maryland. I live in Gaithersburg, and I've been visiting Patuxent River State Park for over 25 years. I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Patuxent River Trail Project, a coalition of user groups collaborating on trails in the upstream portion of the park. When we started advocating for this park in 2014, I got a chance to meet park staff and so many great folks from the Isaac Walton League, Mid-Atlantic Off-Road Enthusiasts, Trail Riders of Today, Montgomery County Roadrunners, and the Mountain Club of Maryland. I personally joined almost all of these clubs. I started organizing trail work in the downstream area of Patuxent in the spring of 2018, working with park staff and our coalition of volunteers. We built new trails between Georgia Avenue and Howard Chapel Road. In the fall of 2019, we received approval to start work on trails west of Woodbine Road. We now have 7 miles of updated trails, and we are working on building more heading upstream towards Ridge Road. I have hiked in the Patuxent wildlands many times. As a longtime resident, I cherish our wonderful parks and forests. As a regular visitor of Patuxent, I appreciate the natural beauty and serenity of this park. And as a volunteer, I cherish my relationships with everyone I've met along the way who enjoys this park and helps maintain the paths and trails. I fully support this proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newton. And our third speaker tonight is Kim Egan.
Mr. Chair, I think she's stuck in the waiting room.
Yeah, I can see her. Please unmute yourself.
I think I missed Peter or others.
Peter spoke already. Peter and Tom spoke already.
Okay. I don't want to repeat anything they said, but first of all, hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I live across the street from the wildlands and on Jennings Chapel Road. And I know you've got horse people on to testify about horse things, but I want to testify just as a neighbor who has had some concerns about access into the wildlands from just a public safety perspective. Last summer, a couple summers ago, we had a fire in the part of the wildlands closest to Jennings Chapel Road and Jones Road. And it threatened the homes on both sides of those roads, including my home. And it was a warm summer day and it was a very tense afternoon. Fortunately, the wind changed. The wind was coming. It was coming in our direction, clearly, and it was up to the road. So the wind changed, luckily, and it didn't end up damaging any homes or crossing Jennings Chapel on the way to 97, but that was luck. And I understood later from Carrie McIntosh and others that they had been having some trouble getting to where the fire is. And so when the wind changed and it moved to a different location, they were able to get in there. So it's not an abstract problem. It's not an academic problem. Getting into allowing other groups to help DNR keep these trails open is important for that reason. But it's also important to know that the park system has always relied on volunteers to maintain the trails. They don't have any funding for routine trail maintenance. Routine trail maintenance has always been done by volunteers and it always will be. So they don't have the manpower to do this on their own. And so they really do need to be able to take advantage of willing and able volunteers to keep these trails open and safe, keep the access safe. And I'm happy to answer questions.
You have any questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Egan. So our fourth speaker tonight is Crystal Pickett.
Chair, there was a question.
Okay, Delegate Hill.
Thank you. I don't want to take up much time, but I was not familiar with Annapolis Rock, and I've been looking at the maps and everything, and the need to have volunteers. Is that unique to this area of the park because we don't have the resources, or is this the same thing we have in other areas of the park? This looks like it's an area I'd like to explore myself. I'm excited about it, but I just need to know a little bit more.
Got it. I wrote it down. So our next speaker is Mr. Crystal Pickett. Sorry, I didn't see your sign earlier, so I think the speaker left.
I do not see Crystal Pickett in the radar.
Our next speaker is Miss Tessa Wynn.
There's no Tessa Wynn in the radar.
Okay. Next one is Christina Micek.
I'm letting. They're joining the meeting now.
Miss Micek, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hi.
They're joining the meeting now.
Yeah, please go ahead, Miss Micek. Miss Micek, please go ahead.
Yes. I am the delegated representative.
Unmute yourself.
I did unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I am the delegated representative of Potomac Bridle and Hi. Hiking Trail
They're joining the meeting.
Association.
Yeah, please go ahead, Miss Micek. Miss Micek, please go ahead.
Yes. I am the delegated representative.
Unmute yourself.
And I am calling in because the Patuxent River State Park straddles both Montgomery and Howard counties, and our organization has helped the Department of Natural Resources and more create 7 miles of new multi-use surface trails. I don't want to fatigue the committee. My testimony is in writing, but the issue with this state wildlands area is that because it is designated as state wildlands, it is not able to be used mechanized equipment such as chainsaws, etc., by volunteers to help clear the land. So what has happened in the last, I'd say 5 years, is that the multiflora that is in the wildlands, as well as very large trees, have fallen and have created a very unsafe situation to allow first responders to get in if anything happens. So I think we believe that this bill is narrowly tailored focus to allow DNR to enter into user agreements with volunteers to use mechanized tools, and the service just for keeping the existing trails open is imperative. And we thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Micek. And now we move back to Ms. Crystal Pickett. Please go ahead, Ms. Pickett. Unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Pickett. I live in Mount Airy, Maryland. And I have been riding in Patuxent for almost 35 years.
Please go ahead, Ms. Pickett. Unmute yourself. Yeah, please unmute your background. So like YouTube and other stuff.
Hi, everyone.
Oh,
My
I
name is Crystal
apologize.
Pickett. I live in Sorry about that. I got kicked out a few minutes ago and just had to dial back in. I do apologize. Anyway, I live in Mount Airy. I am a member of I'm the president of the Cattail Chase Races Incorporated, which is located on Jennings Chapel Road, adjacent to the Patuxent. I'm also a member of the Cattail Chase Hounds LLC, also located on Jennings Chapel, and I'm also the treasurer of the Maryland Horse Council, which is located in Lisbon and Howard County. And I have been riding on Patuxent in the Patuxent wildlands for almost 35 years. Our first speaker referenced an incident. It was a little incorrect. It was 2017. We could not get an EMT equipped ATV into the woods. My rider, who was knocked unconscious, it took him almost an hour to hand carry her out of the woods into the medevac, wasting valuable time. Kerry McIntosh was scheduled to speak tonight. He is a life member of the Lisbon Volunteer Fire Company and the past fire chief. He was called in to work tonight. He has asked me to give this in his stead, and I think it's coming from the fire chief. It carries a lot more weight than from me. In his almost 35 years as a first responder, he's been on numerous incidents in the park. The injured hunter from a fall, the accidental shooting of a hunter by another hunter, the hunter who started to have chest pain from hiking into the trails, the injured hiker with an ankle injury that couldn't walk out on his own, the hiker that was in the park for most of the day that didn't prepare for the extended time when he got lost and dehydrated, the rider thrown from her horse, that was probably mine. The list can go on. Almost all of these patients could only be accessed on foot due to naturally occurring obstacles that block access to the trails. Some patients that needed immediate care spent hours in the park before being located and removed to awaiting ambulances. So the fire department would like to see this happen. Do you have any questions for me?
Do you have any questions? No, we're good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you,
I'm
Mrs.
speaking
Pickett.
so fast. I didn't want to have the timer hit me.
We have a timer, but as a background. So
Okay.
when it buzzes, you will hear it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for showing up. So next speaker is Mr. Thomas Bordeaux.
He has submitted his testimony via letter.
Okay. So do we still have Carrie McIntosh? Because I saw like
That's who I just spoke for.
yeah, you kind of covered his role. Okay. So do we have Larry Raskin?
Admitting now.
Okay. Miss Raskin, please go ahead. Unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Larry Raskin. I purchased my farmette in Howard County in 1985, and I have ridden the area we're talking about ever since. I am talking in favor of the proposal. I am a member of Maryland Search and Rescue in Clarksville, Maryland, and Trot Search and Rescue, Maryland's only mounted team. Additionally, I am certified by the U.S. Forest Service and Maryland Natural Resources for chainsaw operations and volunteer with Maryland Natural Resources chainsaw crew to maintain the trails in Morgan Run Natural Environmental Area and Soldiers Delight Natural Environmental Area, not different from the area we're talking about now. I live close to Annapolis Rock, and I use the park for training for both search and rescue training my horses and as well as both of my teams. The park, as you know, is a mix of Maryland Forest Service wildlands and National Resource, Maryland Resources parkland. I've spoken with the forest ranger. I've spoken with who said that the park is maintained by the Natural Resources Ranger. I've spoken with the Resources Ranger, who has told me that they do not have the resources, time, money, or funds for the maintenance. As a member of the Maryland Search Team Task Force, as you've heard, I am very concerned that if we are called in by DNR or MSP to locate a missing person, MSTTF's ability to access sections of the park, locate the missing person, and safely transport them will be compromised due to the lack of trail maintenance. According to the park's website, the park consists of 6,700 acres of natural land and farmland. The park is mapped, but only very small sections of it. The section from North 97 Georgia Avenue to Howard Chapel, and the section from Annapolis Rock Road 94 up to Mullinex Mill. The section we're talking about in the central section, 94 to 97, is not mapped, not trailed, and no blazes are in there. I'll give you an example. The Park Service placed parking signs and advertised the park. The Park Service did not differentiate between Annapolis Rock Park off Annapolis Rock Road and Annapolis Rocks Park off US 40 on the Appalachian Trail. Over the last several years, I've helped numerous people who were trying to find the overlook at Annapolis Rock, but were actually in Annapolis Rock. I've talked to the ranger about this, about placing signs to help the public. To date, nothing has happened. From a life safety perspective, I fully support members of the public volunteering their time and equipment to maintain the trails. For years prior, as you've heard, the volunteers maintained the trails. I would be happy to volunteer my time to help maintain the trails in Patuxent River Park, as I do currently in Morgan Run Natural Environmental Park, not different, and Soldiers Delight Natural Environmental Park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Mr. Raskin. So, Mr. Jeffrey, I think Senator Hester trying to join in. Her computer broke down. Can you look at that? Yeah. So our next speaker is Mr. D. Mac Johnson.
Being admitted now.
Mr. Johnson, please unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me and see me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. I'm here in favor of Bill 19-25. Is that the bill we're speaking on at this point?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. So Chairman Lamb, Chairman Wu, Vice Chair Ziegler, and other esteemed members of the Howard County delegation. My name is Matt Johnson, and I proudly represent the professional firefighters of Howard County, IAFF Local 2000, as their second vice president. Our organization consists of over 500 firefighters and lieutenants, and tonight my testimony is their testimony as I speak in strong support of Bill 19-25 with amendments which will provide firefighters access to medicinal cannabis while off duty. First off, we are not advocating for impairment on the job, nor does this bill allow that. Firefighters have long had access to legal substances like prescription medications and alcohol that could impair judgment if misused. Yet on-the-job impairment is virtually non-existent in the fire service because we hold ourselves to the highest standards of professionalism. This bill simply adds cannabis to the list of lawful medications for which a firefighter may be prescribed, nothing more, nothing less. It ensures that the presence of THC metabolites in a urine test, which can stay detectable for over a month after the last use, will not be the sole basis for disciplinary action. Medicinal cannabis should be treated like any other prescription medication. Firefighters are no strangers to the impact that medications can have on our ability to perform, but we are trusted to evaluate ourselves and our peers for impairment on a daily basis. Adding medicinal cannabis as a treatment option doesn't change that responsibility. Every firefighter is medically trained and capable of determining impairment in ourselves, our peers, and those we serve. If we can assess whether a patient is too impaired to refuse medical treatment, we are certainly capable of applying that same judgment to our own fitness for duty. It's also critical to note that the fire service is not a DOT-regulated industry. While some firefighters do in fact hold commercial driver's licenses, the county and department are not bound by DOT drug testing standards. Howard County has the authority to set its own policies regarding drug testing for non-DOT regulated positions, and we have not conducted DOT drug testing in the fire department since at least 1991. Over the last 6 months, we have worked collaboratively with county administration, presenting expert recommendations, data, and solutions to their concerns. Despite this, while they have acknowledged that cannabis is a medication and they want us to have access to it while off duty, the county has been unwilling to move forward on this policy change, despite there being no state law or federal regulation which prevents them from doing so. This legislation would be extremely impactful for our membership. We love the county we serve, and we had hoped to achieve resolution by working directly with the county administration. But given their hesitancy to move forward at this time, we believed bringing this to a different venue with different decision makers, you, the Howard County delegation, we could accomplish our goal and provide our members with the relief they seek. I urge you to support this bill. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Do we have any questions? Okay, thank you for your service.
Thank
And
you.
Senator Lamb, I will give the next turn for you to call the speakers.
All right, thank you. We're going to go to the next witness. This is still in Howard County Bill 19-25. Next up, we have Mr. John Gardell. If we can let him in. And all right, Mr. Gardell, you're on. Go ahead.
Are no strangers to the form. We are trusted to evaluate ourselves and our
You may
peers.
want to turn off your YouTube live stream because we're hearing you in double.
Sorry about that, sir.
No problem. All right, go ahead.
Chairman and distinguished members of the Howard County delegation, my name is John Gardell, and I serve as a battalion chief with the Pittsburgh Bureau of Fire in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony today on behalf of the International Association of Firefighters. I am here to share my experience and insights regarding the use of medical cannabis by emergency service personnel. In May of 2018, the city of Pittsburgh implemented a policy preventing members of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Fire to use medical cannabis in accordance with Pennsylvania state law. This policy was introduced in response to the needs of our members, many of whom were military veterans managing service-related injuries, including post-traumatic stress injuries, sleep disorders, and chronic pain. Prior to this policy, firefighters struggling with these conditions often relied on prescription medication, such as sleep aids, antidepressants, and opioids, many which carry significant side effects and risks. Others turned to alcohol, sometimes leading to dependency issues. The introduction of medical cannabis as an alternative treatment option has provided many of our members with a safer and more effective means of managing their conditions. Since the adoption of the policy nearly 7 years ago, we have seen a marked improvement in the well-being of our personnel. Many members have reported a significant enhancement in their quality of life, while incidents related to alcohol use, such as driving under the influence and public intoxication, have declined. Furthermore, there have been no reported incidents of cannabis misuse, whether on duty or off duty within our department. As a firefighter who served both in the United States Air Force and the Pittsburgh Bureau of Fire, I have personally navigated the challenges of PTSI. In the past, I relied on the over-the-counter sleep aids to manage symptoms, but I found them increasingly ineffective over time. In late 2019, I was prescribed medical cannabis. Initially, I was hesitant due to the stigma surrounding its use. As a company officer and a father, I was concerned about how my decision would be perceived by my peers and loved ones. However, my experience has been overwhelmingly positive. Since beginning treatment with medical cannabis, my sleep quality has improved, my irritability has decreased, and I've become more focused both at work and in my personal life. Despite its proven benefits, medical cannabis still carries a stigma that prevents many firefighters from considering it as a viable treatment option. However, in Pittsburgh, it has provided a valuable alternative for those struggling with service-related conditions. As more states expand access to medical cannabis, it is imperative that policymakers recognize its benefits for emergency responders. The men and women who dedicate their lives to protecting our communities deserve access to treatments that improve their health and well-being. I urge you to support policies that allow firefighters and emergency service workers to benefit from responsible use of medical cannabis. Thank you for your time and consideration. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Gardell. Any questions from the delegation? All right, seeing none, we'll proceed to our next witness, still on Howard County 19-25. We have Bradley Klukas coming up next. If we can let him in. All right, thank you for joining us. You're up next. You can go ahead and proceed.
Chairman Lamb and esteemed members of the Howard County delegation, thank you for your time this evening and for your dedication to serving Howard County. My name is Brad Klukas. I was a resident of Howard County and my parents still live there for 15 years growing up. I served 4 years in the Marine Corps, including time in a combat zone. I've dedicated the past 18 years to Howard County Fire and Rescue. I proudly serve on the Special Operations Team and the Honor Guard. Tonight, I stand before you to advocate for a favorable vote, granting my fellow firefighters access to medicinal cannabis. The reality is stark. 70% of firefighters experience chronic pain that requires medical treatment. Numerous clinical studies confirm that cannabis is highly effective for pain management and, crucially, can reduce or eliminate opioid dependency. The National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine have given cannabis their highest rating, conclusive, high-quality evidence for its efficacy and pain relief. Cancer is another devastating reality for firefighters. We are 150% more likely to develop cancer than the general public and 20% more likely to die from it. I have lost close friends to this disease. Firefighters who might have found relief in cannabis, but feared job repercussions. For cancer patients, it is a clinically supported treatment that reduces nausea, increases appetite, and even inhibits cancer cell growth and metastases. The cancer it has promise in treating brain, breast, cervical, colon, leukemia, and prostate mirror those covered under Maryland Presumptive Cancer Act. Beyond physical health, mental well-being in the fire service is in crisis. 1 in 5 firefighters suffers from PTSD. Even more alarming, we are 3 times more likely to die by suicide than a line-of-duty death incident. The NIH and other major research bodies have found that cannabis effectively treats PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Additionally, cannabis has been shown to significantly improve sleep quality and duration, something every firefighter struggles with the demands of the job. Cannabis is medicine. We are not asking for reckless or on-duty use, only for the ability to seek responsible off-duty treatment under the care of a licensed medical professional. By denying us access, we are being deprived of a critical tool that could help us recover, function, and continue serving the community that we love. I urge you to support this measure for the well-being of those who dedicate their lives to protecting others. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the delegation? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Klukas. Next, we have Mr. Kevin Rohrer. We could let him in from the waiting room. Great. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Rohrer. You are live. You can go ahead and proceed.
Chairman Lamb, Chairman Wu, and Madam Vice Chair Ziegler, and other esteemed members of Howard County Delegation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I'm speaking in favor of Howard County Bill 1925. My name's Kevin Rohrer. I've been with the Howard County Fire Rescue Service for about 7 years now. I've got 12 years of public service experience, both as a deputy sheriff and as a firefighter. I also am medically separated from the United States Army, 29th Infantry Division. Through my years and my experience, I've gathered, many types of injuries, both physical and mental, through what I've had to see and go through. While dealing with medical staff, the military, and in the public sector, been given multitude of medications, opioid cocktails, in numerous amounts. Unfortunately, I've been a person who had all the adverse reactions to all said medications. So for about 2 years now, I've had to deal with little to no help. No medications have served me. I've decided to walk away from the types of opioid medications just due to the nature of how they made me feel. And they wildly exacerbated, my medical condition. After speaking with numerous, public service members that have either retired or separated, to include veterans that I served with, they've used, marijuana as a medication, and they've told me nothing but great things about it. Unfortunately, because I work, with Howard County, I haven't been able to, utilize that outlet. And that's why, as soon as I heard about this bill, I wanted to speak, because this could truly be a beacon of hope for not only veterans, but, veterans who are serving in public service right now. And thank you guys so much for hearing me. And I'm open for any questions. I'm willing to answer right now.
Thank you. I see a question from Delegate Hill. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for giving your testimony. And you may not be able to answer this question, but I haven't seen anyone else who was, better suited. So the bill says, that if someone is prescribed medical cannabis and is approved as a appropriate user, that can't be held against them. But it also says that they can't have used it within 12 hours of coming on duty. And I know we're not talking about the levels that you can measure, because that could last for weeks, but the physiologic effects
Yes, ma'am.
can last for some hours. And I was just wondering where the 12, is there a reason that we wouldn't say you could not have used it within 24 hours of being on duty? Is there, in your experience and talking with others, you feel like the physiologic effects that you see are done in all cases, whether ingested or inhaled, because the onset is different at 12 hours, or would it be more reasonable to say within 24 hours?
I would have to refer back to Mr. Johnson on the testimony. He's done more of the research on that. I do know I do know it has a lot to do with the actual testing itself and how you set the parameters on the testing. But as far as speaking in depth on that, I honestly don't know, and I couldn't go that in depth on it. I
Okay.
apologize for that.
I appreciate that. No, that's fine. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Rohrer? Seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate being here.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we will move on to Mr. Paul Armentano. If we can let him into the out of the waiting room. And I see that he's joined us. Mr. Armentano, if you can hear us, you may proceed. Mr. Armentano, can you hear us? Oh, there we go. All right. And you're also testifying on HOCO 19-25. Go ahead. Mr. Arment, go ahead. All right, now you're unmuted.
Sorry for the delay. Thank you. My name is Paul Armentano. I'm a Maryland resident who has worked professionally in cannabis policy for over 30 years. I possess an extensive understanding of cannabinoid pharmacokinetics, and I have testified as an expert witness in numerous state and federal court cases specific to cannabis and drug testing. I also helped create one of the first smartphone applications designed to identify cannabis-induced impairment of performance. For the better part of the past year, I've worked with representatives of the IAFF Local 2000, and I'm speaking to you today in favor of HOCO 19-25 with amendments. Howard County's current policy permits the department to take adverse actions against current and would-be employees who consume state legal medical cannabis products while off the job. This policy is problematic for several reasons. It limits the pool of applicants seeking employment with the county. It penalizes those who rely on cannabis as medicine, and it discriminates against people who are acting in compliance with the state laws of Maryland that legalize the use of medical cannabis. While I agree with the intent of this proposed act, I believe that specific amendments to its text are necessary to truly protect patients from these discriminatory practices. Specifically, I ask that language be added to the text stipulating that the department may not refuse to hire, discharge, or otherwise discriminate against an individual who tests positive for the presence of either THC or its metabolites in their hair, blood, urine, or other bodily fluids, absent demonstrable evidence of impaired behavioral or cognitive performance. This language is necessary because Howard County's current practice of toxicological testing and the use of urinalysis specifically is outdated and discriminatory. That's because urine screening only detects inert byproducts, known as metabolites, that occur after the body has metabolized the drug's psychoactive components. Urine testing does not determine whether someone is impaired, nor can it determine when someone was last exposed to any controlled substance. That's because THC's primary metabolite is fat-soluble. Therefore, it may be detectable for days, weeks, or even months post-abstinence. Since no toxicological test can determine when a subject last consumed cannabis, I also suggest that lawmakers strike language from the bill stating the department may prohibit an employee from using cannabis within the 12 hours immediately preceding the employee's shift, because there is no test that can determine when an employee last used cannabis. Instead, I suggest that the bill's text simply prohibit an employee's use of cannabis while on duty. If employers wish to better ascertain whether their employees may be under the influence of either cannabis or any other controlled substance while at work, I'd encourage the department to incorporate the use of cognitive performance testing technology, such as Predictive Safety's Alert Meter or Impairment Science's Druid app. This technology, unlike urinalysis or blood testing, gauges employees' actual performance versus their own personal baseline, thereby providing a far more accurate determination of whether someone is impaired on the job. Adopting this act in Howard County will not jeopardize workplace safety. The city of Baltimore and Frederick County already prohibit pre-employment cannabis testing, and the city of Annapolis recently adopted guidelines prohibiting employers from taking adverse actions in either the hiring or firing process against any public employee who tests positive for cannabis absent evidence of impairment.
Mr. Armentano,
Howard County's ongoing discrimination against firefighters and others who rely on medical cannabis, I urge you to amend and pass this act. I welcome any questions you may have, and I'd like to remind you that I submitted via written testimony more comprehensive remarks and citations. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Joffrey, I think you were just indicating time, right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, okay. Apologies. Wasn't quite sure, but any questions for Mr. Armentano? Okay, Delegate Hill, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Armentano, I'd asked this of a previous witness, but you seem to be more suited. I know your recommendation, because testing is certainly unreliable, is that we change the last part to say just not on the job. I'm wondering about the other, since edibles can take up to 2 hours to kick in and can last up to 8 hours. And if we're not testing and we're simply asking people to affirm when the last time was that they took, and obviously judging from behavior and some of the non serum tests or biological tests, would it, if we wanted to say you can't have used it within some period of time, is 12 hours to your experience and from your research appropriate? It would be more appropriate to say 24 hours if we want to try and ensure that there are no physiological effects that are still lingering. 12 versus 24 hours.
So you're correct that depending on the route of ingestion, the onset of the drug's effect will be altered and the duration of effect will also be variable. So when someone inhales cannabis, the effects are rather instantaneous and they tend to last about 2 to 3 hours. When someone ingests cannabis orally, because the THC has to be metabolized by the liver before it enters the bloodstream, there's a several hour delay before the onset of effects, and then those effects can last several hours. The problem with trying to delineate a time period with which one cannot theoretically use cannabis prior to showing up to work is the fact that there is no toxicological test that casts such a narrow window of detection time that it would test negative if somebody had used cannabis within that very narrow window of time. In other words, there is no test that could be administered that says this person has used cannabis within the last 12 hours versus they've used it within the last 24 hours or 1 week.
Right. We're not
so
testing.
That's why that timeline is rather meaningless, because there's no way for one to establish. It will still come down to the employee's word of when they used cannabis, because the test will not be able to delineate.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further questions, we'll proceed to the next witness. And if you can let Councilperson Deb Jung on, she is testifying on HOCO 17-25. And I see Councilperson has joined us, almost. All right, Councilperson Jung, as soon as your audio is on, which it looks like it is, you can go ahead and proceed. You're still muted. There you go.
Thank you. I've only been on Zooms today for 5 hours, but thank you. So I am testifying on your bill, Senator Lamb, and I want to thank you for adding Howard County to the list of counties that can use noise monitors to detect and issue citations for noxious motor vehicles that produce excessive noise. My district, District 4, which is a part of your District 12 as well, has been plagued by cars that have purposefully modified their engines to produce as much noise as possible. These cars race each other on the state highways, speed through neighborhood streets, and gather in parking lots to show off their illegal engine modifications. In 2022, the River Hill community was the center of exhibition driving, car rallies, and drag racing. The Community Association held a town hall to discuss with the Howard County Police how to curtail noise disturbances from motor vehicles with modified engines. Neighbors shared stories about pop-up car rallies at a local shopping center that resulted in late-night engine revving, trespassing, and urinating on private property, as well as reckless driving through residential streets. Other stories included eyewitness accounts of drag racers stopping traffic on Route 32 to conduct an impromptu car race. The Howard County Police have done an excellent job disrupting car rallies planned through social media, but the police are limited in enforcing noise laws for individual vehicles traveling on our roads. Using monitoring devices in high occurrence areas provides a level of detection that is not currently available or feasible for local patrols. Several constituents have contacted me asking for Howard County to install the same noise abatement monitors that are now being used in Montgomery County. I am thankful that you, Senator Lamb, has responded to these requests by giving Howard County this essential tool. District 4 will sleep more comfortably if this bill passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Councilmember Jung? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Right. Good night.
Good night. Next, we were going to proceed to testimony about Howard County 1-25. This is regarding Howard Community College. We will begin with Mari Wepprecht. We can let her in from the waiting room. All right. And you're live. You can go ahead.
I am speaking in favor of HOCO 1-25, as are all the faculty following me. Thank you, members of Howard delegation. My name is Mari Wepprecht, and I'm an associate professor at Howard Community College, where I've had the privilege of teaching for over 15 years. Teaching and working with students is my passion. But in recent years, the challenges of this profession have significantly increased. Many faculty members will attest that our roles have changed considerably, and unfortunately, not for the better. Rather than being able to focus solely on teaching and fostering student success, we find ourselves increasingly preoccupied with systemic issues that hinder our ability to do so. We are constantly worried about our students slipping through the cracks of a system that is struggling to support them adequately. Last semester, I participated in the implementation of our new 7-week initiative, redesigning my courses with enthusiasm and an openness to innovation. However, the rollout of this and other initiatives have been deeply flawed. Students who should have been limited to 3 courses per 7-week session were instead enrolled in 4 or 5, setting them up not to succeed. There are many critical issues affecting our institution that I believe the Board of Trustees should be aware of. However, the information reaching them is incomplete, as they primarily hear from the president and her leadership team. Faculty voices, along with those of students and staff, are largely absent from these discussions. As union faculty, we support all proposed amendments to this bill, but I would like to specifically highlight the amendment that mandates every Board of Trustees meeting must include a public comment session. Although there is theoretically a public comment period at board meetings, in practice, this has not been honored under the current administration. A review of board meeting records, which are publicly available, reveals that there have not been any public comments in nearly 3 years, and they were rare even before that. The reason for this is simple. The president acts as a gatekeeper, controlling who is permitted to speak. Faculty members have been denied the opportunity to address the Board of Trustees during meetings. I had the honor of speaking before the board approximately 8 years ago under the past president, and I believe it's crucial for those working directly with students to once again have a voice in these discussions. We are advocating for a structured and transparent public comment process, one that mirrors the practice of the county council or school board, or even the testimony I am giving today. The Howard
If you can
delegation
wrap up your testimony, I apologize.
has the
We have
opportunity
time.
to bring about meaningful change, and we hope you will support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that testimony. Any questions from the delegation? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Next, we will have Mr. Brendan Diamond, who signed up. If we could let him in from the waiting room.
He is not in the waiting room at the moment.
Okay, he comes back. Just let
He'll
me
be
know.
back. He has a baby.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll see if we can get back to him at the end of this. Next, we have Rachel Adams. We can let Rachel Adams in from the waiting room. Okay. Thank you for joining us. You can proceed.
Are we waiting on me or Dr. Diamond? I heard his name.
You're up. You can go ahead.
Excellent. Well, thank you, members of the Howard County delegation. My name is Rachel Adams, and I'm an associate professor of communication studies at HCC. I joined the faculty in August 2016, and in my 8.5 years at the college, I've been privileged to win several awards for teaching and for service. I was also honored to serve as one of the keynote speakers at our May 2022 commencement ceremony, which some of you attended. And I'm not saying this to brag about my accomplishments here, but to provide some background on the type of instructor and colleague that I am. Like all of us, I am dedicated to the service of my college, to the improvement of my own teaching, and to the support of my students whom I love more than I can say. I don't ever want to be anywhere but a community college, and I was hoping that HCC would be the last stop on my teaching career. However, as I'm sure you've heard, morale at HCC is struggling. Faculty are pulled in multiple directions by new and half-formed initiatives, which we are directed to make happen without the appropriate support or time. We track the revolving door of arrivals and departures, sometimes only weeks apart, on the president's update. And the formation of our faculty union does provide some security, but with it comes an increasingly unfriendly relationship with the administration. To be honest, I no longer feel welcome or valued at this institution that I love, and I'm kind of starting to wonder how long I can hang on. And with that in mind, I come to you tonight to ask for your support of HOCO 1-25 with Senate amendments. The amendment requiring our Board of Trustees to undergo periodic training with an external nonprofit is essential. Not only is it an industry best practice, as I'm sure you know, we, the faculty, have witnessed firsthand the appearance of rubber stamping by our current trustees. Board of Trustees meetings typically have no questions and no discussion, just votes, and then inevitably entering closed session, which we are not permitted to attend. According to the Community Toolbox, which is a community service at the University of Kansas, board training can and should continue for as long as your board is functioning. And suggested trainings from the corporate board member network include roles and responsibilities, fiduciary duties, liability, board structure, and function. And considering that just last week, our board approved a $7.7 million contract to outsource our human resources department without a single question or word of discussion, and also considering that faculty have no way to contact the trustees outside of attempting to chase them down during a bathroom break during a meeting, a reminder of their obligation to the college community and the taxpayers of Howard County would be very helpful. I thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Adams? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate your testimony. Next, we're going to proceed to Guy Bunyard. If he is in the waiting room, can we let him in? Okay. Mr. Bunyard, you're live. You can proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Howard County delegation, and thank you for the time to speak before you tonight. My name is Guy Bunyard, and I have been a professor of mathematics for 31 years at Howard Community College, and I'm here to express my support for this bill and all of its amendments. I would like to focus my support specifically on one of the bill's amendments, adding a place for the public to have an opportunity to speak openly at a board meeting. While there is currently a provision allowing the public to speak at these meetings, it is not an open process. Right now, to speak at a board meeting, you must reach out in advance to the secretary of the board, who is also the college president, expressing your interest in testifying and both the topic that you will be speaking about and a copy of your testimonial. This creates a scenario where the president of the college is the gatekeeper of the board and can determine on a whim who does and does not deserve an opportunity to speak. This is a large conflict of interest. People should be allowed to speak freely, and what they say should not have to be approved. Certainly, our county council and our own Board of Education in this county do not have these stringent rules in place. I am a member of our newly formed union, and at one of our first meetings, it was suggested that we as a union reach out to the Board of Trustees and let them know as a group that our faculty are ready to work collaboratively with them and our upper administration to move the college's initiatives forward. We wanted to be sure there was no animosity towards us because we formed a union. I volunteered to do this, and per the directions in the Board of Trustee bylaws, I emailed the president of the college and asked to speak at the next meeting to convey this message. I did not hear back from the president, but I did hear back from the college's lawyer with a very short answer. Your request to speak at the Board of Trustees meeting was forwarded to me. Please note that at this time, your request is denied. The section of the Board of Trustees bylaws cited in your email below is not applicable to you. No explanation was given. So I requested a meeting for an explanation and was told by the college's lawyer that the employees of the college are not part of the public. So that was an interesting comment to me that I'm not part of the public. And the president of the college represents all of the employees of the college to the Board of Trustees. This clearly demonstrates a conflict of interest and allows a president to restrict speech from employees that they don't want to give a platform to. This amendment will return the freedom of speech to the public and the college employees and will allow stakeholders to voice their opinions on the functions and happenings of a massive public institution. I ask you for your support of Bill SB 813 and its amendments in helping Howard Community College to have open and transparent processes. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Bunyard? All right, seeing none, we thank you, and we can proceed next to the next witness, who is Roberta Brown. If we can let Roberta Brown in from the waiting room. All right, welcome. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Brown. You can go ahead and proceed. If we can let You may want to mute, if you have it on a live stream or on YouTube, you may want to close that tab or window or mute it because you'll hear an echo. All right, welcome. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Brown. You can go ahead and proceed.
Good evening, esteemed members of the Howard County delegation.
You may want to mute, if you have it on a live stream or on YouTube, you may want to close that tab or window or mute it because you'll hear an echo.
Sorry, gotcha. I'll start over. Good evening, esteemed members of the Howard County delegation. I am grateful for the opportunity to express my strong support for HOCO 125 with Senate amendments. My name is Roberta Brown. I have been a Howard County resident since 1997 and an HCC faculty member since 2007. In addition, both of my children have either attended or are currently attending HCC as students. Transparency and accountability are the foundation of good governance. The decisions made by the HCC's Board of Trustees directly impact students, faculty, staff, and often the entire Howard County community. Across Howard County, other public bodies, including the County Council and the Howard County Public School System Board of Ed, already record and publicly share their meetings. Extending this practice to HCC's Board of Trustees is necessary to maintain consistency and public access to all proceedings affecting the community. This is also a matter of accessibility and equity. Many students, faculty, and community members cannot attend meetings in person due to work schedules, family obligations, or transportation barriers. Providing meeting recordings and timely access to them ensures that all interested parties, regardless of their circumstances, can engage with and understand the decisions being made on their behalf. This issue of transparency and accountability extends beyond just meeting accessibility. Just as clear and consistent access to public discussions is essential, so too is the need for clarity in faculty evaluation and policy enforcement. Faculty have a system of evaluation. We call it our faculty maps. It is time intensive, involves one-on-one meetings with our chair, supervisor 3 times a year, and it requires a lengthy year-end write-up by both the faculty member and chair. It is recognized in both the faculty handbook and in HCC's policies and procedures as to how it is supposed to tie with merit. Last year, the policies and procedures that tie merit to evaluation were completely disregarded, and merit was applied without regard to policy. In addition, just recently, we were sent out a link to the current faculty handbook, which is essentially our job description. But we're also told that the most recent handbook that has been approved by administration was several years old. We need to know what document we are following. It is literally our job description. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I urge you to support this bill fully with its amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? All right, Ms. Brown, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Beth Dushman. If we can let her in from the waiting room. All right, thank you for joining us. You're live. You can go ahead with your testimony.
Hi, I'm sorry. It was letting me in just as you were saying. My name, is it my turn to go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're
I'm
all
sorry.
set. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, members of the Howard delegation. My name is Beth Dushman. I'm an associate professor of physical science at Howard Community College, and I have been teaching here since 2019. Thank you for providing this opportunity for me to express my strong support for HOCO 1-25 with the amendments. When I first started teaching at HCC, I was very impressed by the collegiality and collaboration between faculty and the administration, and by the shared sense of purpose to provide excellent education for Howard County students. However, over the past 3 years, I've been disappointed to see that partnership disintegrate and for faculty voices to be dismissed on many major initiatives, including several campus-wide reorganizations, the introduction of 7-week classes, and on HCC committees. While the intentions of these initiatives might be for the benefit of students, the implementation has been, quite frankly, a disaster. For example, we normally have a college-wide schedule for final exams meant to provide adequate time for exams and reasonable timing and breaks for students. Last semester, however, that schedule was abruptly thrown out. In the resulting chaos, faculty scrambled to rewrite exams for shorter periods or to split them into 2 different classes, and students struggled with back-to-back exams without any breaks. Furthermore, the change in scheduling increased the amount of time that each class met beyond what is actually prescribed by our accrediting agency. When this issue was brought to the administration, they expressed surprise and indicated that they were unaware that finals week had been removed. This is just one example of how the lack of transparency and communication decision-making has a direct impact on students. As faculty, we want our students to succeed, and having advising and tutoring and counseling systems in place and knowing how students can access those systems is crucial to our mission. However, reductions in these services and constant changes to these programs has meant fewer students can access this support. By contrast, the information that's been presented at Board of Trustees meetings paints a much rosier picture, implying that the college is providing a wealth of tutoring, advising, and support systems for students. Increased transparency both to and from the Board of Trustees will provide a clearer sense of what is actually happening on the ground and will allow us to have better focus our time, energy, and resources on creating a better learning environment for our students. Furthermore, there is a lack of transparency in how financial decisions are made and endorsed by the Board of Trustees. At many Board of Trustees meetings, it seems that expenditures are presented and rubber stamped with very little or no discussion about the potential benefits and costs to the college. As faculty, we are constantly being warned that the college is running out of funds. Yet, HCC is hiring many new administrators at ever-increasing salaries, paying for several external consultants, and funding frequent travel for the college's executive team. We need stronger oversight and more transparency into how these decisions are made. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and we look forward to your support.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this witness? All right, seeing none, thank you, Ms. Dushman. I'm going to go back to Brendan Diamond. Is he here at all? Nope, doesn't look like it. Okay. If he comes back later, we can bring him back in. At this point, I'll hand it back over to our House Chair, Delegate Wu, to introduce the next few witnesses.
Thank you, Chair Lam. So our next speaker is Ms. Karen Bridges. Ms. Bridges, please unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you, members of the Howard delegation. My name is Karen Bridges, and I am a Howard County resident, mother of 2 former HCC students, professor and chair of physical sciences at HCC, and a second-year Community College President's Initiative Fellow. I've been at HCC since 2010, and I'm speaking to support HOCO 1-25 with amendments. Every year, all faculty at HCC and staff complete a required training that is critical for remaining an informed member of the HCC community. I'm required to complete a minimum number of additional professional development hours as well to keep my pedagogy informed, to update my understanding of available technological resources, and to learn from my colleagues across the college. Having attended many Board of Trustees meetings in the last few years, I've been surprised to observe a lack of scrutiny of the data presented by our leadership to the Board of Trustees. I have witnessed the blatant misrepresentation of the status of some college initiatives, and no one on the board asked a follow-up question or requested testimony from anyone trying to implement all of these new initiatives. And our National Quest survey was abruptly changed to a non-anonymous internal survey. Only one board member questioned the logic of doing so. He has since resigned. I have never seen a single board member question a budget item, and at the last board meeting, with no public discussion, the board approved an expenditure of over $7 million to replace all employees in the Human Resources Department with a private consulting firm based in Florida. Longtime employees, tax-paying Maryland residents, were released from their duties in what appeared to be a mass firing only a day after this expense was approved. My point is not to diminish the important role of our board in college operations, but rather to ensure all trustees are required to complete ongoing training to refresh their understanding of their roles as gatekeepers for taxpayer investment in HCC, as overseers for the operations of the college, and as critical evaluators of college data, expenditures, and initiatives. Finally, regarding the current faculty union contract negotiations, I can think of no meaningful reason why administrators or faculty would object to furnishing our board with updates on the status of these negotiations. As it stands, bargaining has been going on for just over a year with little progress, and accountability to the board from the faculty union and our self-described pro-union administration would keep everyone on track. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I appreciate the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Philip Bilardo. Mr. Bilardo, please unmute yourself. Go ahead. You're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Forgive me. Thank you, Chairman Wu, Chairman Lam, and other esteemed honored members of the HOCO delegation. My name is Philip Villardo, and I'm a Howard County resident, a professor of sociology, and the former dean of the Social Science and Teacher Education Division, with over 30 years of experience at the college. I'm also the proud parent of a Jumpstart student. Employees have always described Howard Community College as a great place to work with wonderful and supportive colleagues. That, unfortunately, is no longer true. Today, HCC can best be described as a hostile workplace where people live in fear of losing their jobs. Indeed, just last Friday, senior administration suspended or terminated the entire HR department. Were there problems in HR? Yes. For example, it took nearly 8 weeks and multiple communications and resubmissions of paperwork for me to receive the tuition reimbursement I'm entitled to. And this struggle to receive entitled benefits or to be paid for teaching contracts in a timely fashion has become routine for me and my colleagues. But why is HR a mess? Responsibility ultimately rests with the president. The troubles in HR coincided with the arrival of Mr. Joseph Whalen, a trusted lieutenant of Dr. Willis from Everett Community College, to head up HR and workforce culture. That workforce culture quickly became one of fear. There was a great deal of turnover in the HR department, with 2 associate vice presidents of HR and 8 HR employees being separated during his tenure, resulting in a real breakdown of HR processes. Hiring, onboarding, contracts, payroll, any process involving HR soon stuttered and stumbled to a stop. And when Mr. Whalen was unceremoniously escorted off campus, bringing an end to his brief tenure as the head of HR and workplace culture, we began these problems anew. I share this with you so that you can understand why I'm asking you to support HOCO 125, including the proposed amendments. I would like to speak in support of Amendment C, requiring the opportunity for public comment in each board meeting. College and community constituency groups currently have no rights to address the board about matters of public concern, and this oversight potentially puts the college at considerable risk. When senior administration fired the entire HR department, they signed a multi-year contract with Campus Works to provide HR staffing for HCC for the next 5 years. An entire operational area of the college was subcontracted. I'm sure that the Board of Trustees is aware of the termination of the entire HR department, and they approved the nearly $8 million contract for Campus Works. But is the Board of Trustees aware of how this contract and others like it place the institution at risk in our approaching Middle States reaccreditation? The reaccreditation of the college is a matter of grave concern for the board. I bring this up because Middle States has clearly established in its third-party providers procedure.
Mr. Vardo, can you wrap up?
I will, thank you. Against such wholehearted outsourcing of college operations. This puts the college at risk in its reaccreditation process. And so for this reason, I hope that you would support the Howard County 1-25, including its amendments. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Villado. Any questions? Delegate Guzzoni.
Yes, could you just share with us the timeline on the reaccreditation? I'm not sure when that's occurring.
We are about midway through the 10-year accreditation period. We should be doing a report, an updated report. I don't know if they've changed the requirement for those updates, but yeah, we're about midway through that process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Villado. We are moving to next speaker, Dr. Renee May. Dr. May, please unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you, members of the Howard delegation. My name is Dr. Renee May, and I'm a professor of humanities at Howard Community College. I've worked at the college for 25 years, first as an adjunct and as a full-time instructor since 2006. And before I came to work at HCC, I was a student and graduated with an associate's degree in liberal arts. I have deep roots in this community where I've lived for almost 30 years. I want to express my gratitude to Senator Guzzoni, Senator Fry Hester, and especially Senator Lamb for meeting the moment with the introduction of this bill. I also want to thank the county delegates for this opportunity to support HOCO 1-25 with its amendments. HCC needs an anonymous survey, and not so employees can complain. In an article titled 5 Reasons Your Organization Needs an Anonymous Employee Feedback Program, Claire Schmidt of Forbes wrote that employee feedback programs only work if all employees are able to voice their concerns, thoughts, and reactions without fear of it having a negative effect on their status or standing at work. We used to have an anonymous employee survey called Quest. We have years of historical data from this survey to demonstrate how employees feel about their working conditions at HCC. In past years, things have not always been perfect, but previous administrations were not afraid to hear disagreement and criticism. It has long been a part of the college's growth mindset to hear and address feedback. In 2022, the anonymous Quest survey was abandoned in favor of a survey designed in-house, which was not only not anonymous, but also asked only multiple choice questions with no room for qualitative responses. Employees not only feel unsafe replying to this survey because it requires them to identify themselves, but they also feel that the survey does not seek authentic feedback. Why don't employees feel safe? The massive turnover at the college in the last 3 years has been well documented, and while some of those employees left willingly, many of them felt compelled to leave or were terminated by an administrative posture that discourages dissent, disagreement, and perceived disloyalty to an individual or agenda. Comments that direct dissenting individuals to find the exit signs do not inspire confidence. In this climate, employees hesitate to say anything at all. Anonymous surveys increase feedback, make employees feel safe from retaliation, increase employee engagement, and most importantly, giving an anonymous survey shows you care what your employees really think. Everyone, including the Board of Trustees, needs to hear authentic feedback. Our number 1 goal is to serve students, and employees need to feel secure, valued, and supported to do that effectively. We believe HOCO 125, with its original amendments, can help us start to find our way back. Thank you for your time, for your support of this bill, and for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the employees at HCC.
Thank you, Dr. May. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we're moving to next speaker. We're moving back to Mr. Brandon Darman. Mr. Darman, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, delegates. And thank you for calling me forward again. I'm juggling a lot of things as a parent of small children and currently at a roller rink. So I wanted to be here, though, because it's very, very important what you all are doing right now. In this time where public service seems to be in such a vulnerable place, to have you all taking the time to really listen to us means a lot. So thank you all. And what I wanted to do for just a moment is paint a different picture of what it looked like when I first came here. I started teaching. I'm faculty. Brendan Diamond, I've been faculty for 10 years, and I am a physics and astronomy professor. And when I first got here from Florida, I taught at a community college down there. I noticed the difference. I was welcomed. I was supported at every level of the administration, and I could see the difference that we were making in students' lives. When I wanted to go to a conference and bring students with me, every level, they made sure to support what we were doing. And that meant so much to the students going to those conferences. I'm very proud of just last year being invited to a talk given by one of the students that I brought with me to a physics conference. And so I know the difference those things mean to the students. That has become more difficult. I've been involved over the past decade with undergraduate research, and I used to be able to award grants and scholarships on a regular basis to students. With the reorganization that happened in the past few years, the money that went to those scholarships seemed to be going away. And there was no explanation of what happened to it. I pursued that for a while. It is just unfortunate that it seems that some of that institutional knowledge of where funds were going and where they need to get to has been lost. And it's no surprise because the people that have been there have been either leaving early through voluntarily leaving through early retirement, or being pushed out because of very, very difficult working conditions. I know how excellent HCC can be, and I'm very, very hopeful that by enabling an oversight by the Board of Trustees as to where these funds are going, we can make sure that every penny is spent for students and rebuilding this community. So thank you all for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And thank you for
Mr.
your time.
Diamond. And any questions? Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next speaker. Ms. Tara Hart. Ms. Hart, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself and then go ahead.
Good evening, Howard County Delegation. My name is Tara Hart, and I thank you all for the opportunity to speak in support of HOCO 1-25. When I was hired in 1997 as a brand new full-time faculty member at Howard Community College, I had no idea what an incredible role HCC would play in my life and how much I would come to love this college and this community. My children were preschoolers in HCC's Children's Learning Center years ago, and they now take courses on campus as dual enrollment students. So I speak to you tonight as an HCC employee, a faculty union member, and as an HCC parent. I have worked under 5 HCC college presidents, including 2 interim, and their respective boards of trustees. And over 28 years, I have witnessed tremendous growth and change. Until very recently, HCC faculty and staff saw the trustees as good stewards of the college, upholding high standards for higher education, being responsive and engaged with community needs, and as the servant leaders at the top of the college's organizational chart, holding the college's senior leadership accountable for organizational excellence. I'm sorry to say that things feel very different now. There is an unprecedented lack of confidence among employees that the trustees are being given accurate information and that they feel empowered to question it. Employees have been silenced, and we feel very vulnerable. The Quest survey used to be conducted yearly, providing us with a voluntary and anonymous opportunity to give our candid assessment of college services, campus climate, job satisfaction, and college leadership. The results were used to celebrate what was done well, to set goals, to allocate resources, and to focus on improvement. But we have not had a protected opportunity to provide feedback since 2022. And none of us imagined that this opportunity would be removed and that we would actually require legislative help to restore it. I support the amendment to the bill that would provide the board with an unedited annual report on employee satisfaction that allows our diverse voices to be heard. And sadly, with all of the turnover lately, there are fewer voices every day. With your help, we might begin to restore the culture of trust, transparency, and accountability that made HCC such a great college to work for and such a joy for so many years. This and the other measures proposed give us specific tools to move forward together to meet the challenges of higher education today. I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Hart. Any question for Dr. Hart? Okay, thank you. And we're moving to the next speaker, Dr. Alejandro Musio. Dr. Musio, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Howard County delegates. My name is Dr. Alejandro Musio, and I am a professor of anthropology at Howard Community College, and I'm here today to express my strong support for Bill SB 813 and its crucial amendments. This morning, I returned to my office after teaching, and I noticed my window sign stating, "Sign the contract, decision makers to the table," had been removed from my window, while other signs, both union and non-union signs on my door, remained untouched. When I asked campus officials, they cited a policy prohibiting all signs posted on doors and windows. However, a campus official clarified that only union-related signs needed to be removed as directed by administration. Quote, "The union signs gotta go." The official also confirmed that signs related to other topics such as sports, LGBT, and Black Lives Matter would not be removed. Refusal to comply would be met with disciplinary action for non-compliance. This selective enforcement sends a clear message that if you support the faculty union, as an overwhelming majority do, you will be targeted. And I will let the delegation interpret why today was selected for enforcement on several of those whom are testifying today. Over the past 3 years, the college has experienced significant chaos with multiple turnovers in senior administration positions, the creation of new positions, the elimination of others. This instability has profoundly impacted students, staff, faculty, and the overall functioning of the college. A recent example is the cancellation and subsequent reinstatement of the 4-week winter semester. Budget materials show that this semester is economically successful, yet it was removed from the annual schedule by administration. Last year, we were informed that winter 2025, just now, would be the last session. However, just last week, senior administrators stated that they were unaware of the cancellation and were trying to find out who had made the decision. Winter 2026 was not included in the schedules provided to faculty for staffing, so it was clear that it had been deleted at a higher level. But the administration implied that faculty spread false rumors about the cancellation. In reality, the cancellation was first communicated in 2024, and it was a surprise to many that winter 2025 was still on the schedule. If you're slightly confused and disconcerted, welcome to a day in Dragon Country. This matters greatly to students who want to complete a quick 3-credit course in a 4-week session. It matters to community members whose children return for winter break and save money by taking a class at HCC. When I arrived at HCC 5 years ago, it functioned like a well-oiled machine, and it received the Baldridge Award for Institutional Excellence. Unfortunately, those days have long passed. Information is often contradictory, and important college decisions are no longer collaborative, transparent, or well executed by the administration, which often passes the blame afterwards down the chain to the underlings who had no say or input in the decisions but shoulder all the responsibility and the negative outcomes. I'm hopeful that the passing of Bill SB 813 and its amendments will bring much needed transparency and excellence back to Howard Community College. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Musio. And Senator Lamb?
Yeah, thank you. I did have a follow-up question. I'm a little bit I guess, disturbed and trying to understand what happened and what you're describing happened earlier today. So you're saying that there were security officials that from the college that were dispatched to a few offices there who proceeded to, I presume, unannounced, is that right? And then went through your offices?
That is correct. I arrived to my office after teaching my classes and my sign was gone. So I called the public safety office and I requested information. I said, hey, it seems that my sign has been removed. They said, yes, we removed it and we will visit your office to discuss this. So they came with a specific policy which says no signs or posters on doors, windows, etc. But they only specifically enforced it on a select group of faculty. So currently, we're working with our national, union AFT, and we're also working internally to write up an internal complaint to get to the bottom of this situation. But what was particularly concerning was, the quote from the official, which was very specific, which said the enforcement action was specific to union materials, which is a clear violation of our rights. So we're going to be pursuing further action tomorrow and Friday.
So your other signs and other wall hangings that did not pertain to the unionization or union efforts, labor efforts there were left untouched.
Correct. Only the sign that was on the window, right? And only certain windows. So it was a completely arbitrary enforcement of this policy. If you want to enforce the policy, it must be enforced for everyone equally, but they specifically targeted a certain building and a certain group of faculty for this enforcement action. So we're still, we need to get to the bottom of this, but this is not the end. This is just the beginning.
Was this on the outside of your office or on the inside?
On the inside of my office. So a master key was used to access my office, remove the materials, and then close my office door. Some of my colleagues actually encountered the security officials directly. One of them refused to comply and was threatened with disciplinary action for non-compliance. And we're going to see how that pans out. But we are standing our grounds. We are very certain that we are in the right and that this is an unfair application of policy meant to intimidate us.
So someone entered your office while you were not there.
Specifically, campus security under the orders of a senior executive at the college. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Delegate Hill.
Thank you. You had said doors and windows, but what was taken down was from the windows. You had other signs on the windows that remained. I want to be clear, they weren't just on the doors that remained. You had other signs on the windows that remained?
Right. So I had, there's windows like in the office, there's windows to the hallway. Other pro-union material was on the windows in the hallway. Some of the signs on other faculty members' doors were ripped down. But specific in my situation only, it was the sign that I had in the window, which was, sign the contract, decision makers to the table, specifically addressing the fact that we've put forth 30 proposals 6 months ago, and we're still waiting for a substantive response from a senior administration who has all the resources. They have external lawyers. They have, a new position of a legal counsel.
I want to get the technical. So these are outward facing windows, or they're hallway facing windows, and
Correct.
The signs were facing outward, or the signs were facing to people who are in your office?
In my case, my outward sign was removed from the window. I had inward facing signs that were not touched. In my case, other faculty members, their inward signs were removed as well.
Are you aware of non-union signs that were facing outward on an outward window that were allowed to stay up?
There are outward facing signs throughout campus, like LGBT flag, Black Lives Matter things, posters, like there's other materials that in the past have been out there and they were not enforced.
And they were not taken down either.
Correct. Not to my knowledge. And I think most specifically, we put up those signs like 2 weeks ago. So there's been no action, no request to take them down, no communication whatsoever. But today, spontaneously, was the day for enforcement, specifically on certain faculty with signs facing outwardly and other faculty with signs on their doors.
And just to be clear, are you aware of any non-union signs that were removed?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have
other questions?
Can I have just a follow-up request of him? Were any photos or anything that documented this occurrence available? Do you know if anyone took any photos of what occurred?
We do have some photos. We do have some photos of like the doors with the missing signs, and we are compiling that evidence.
Can you share that with the delegation?
Yes.
Thank
I'll
you.
do that tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have other questions? Otherwise, thank you, Dr. Musio. So we're moving to our next speaker, Mr. Austin Kingston. Mr. Kingston, please unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you all for allowing me to join. Thank you, members of the Howard delegation. My name is Austin Kingston, and I am a union organizer with AFT Maryland. I've been the AFT's representative for the faculty union at Howard Community College for the past 3 months, and I'm here to express my support as well for HOCO 1-25 and reinforce what members of my union have been expressing throughout this hearing. From the moment I arrived on campus at Howard Community College, two things became immediately apparent. First, faculty made it very clear to me that they are exhausted. For several years, they have watched as the college's regular operations have been disrupted. Faculty have told me that their out-of-class workload has increased dramatically because of departmental reorganizations that, on many levels, make no sense. Faculty have told me that they have been emotionally, physically, and professionally broken by the poor implementation of 7-week courses at HCC. And as teachers, they have dealt with the brunt of the feedback from students. Faculty have called and emailed me, furious, because senior leadership at HCC is so behind on approving overload contracts that faculty have been teaching courses without pay for months. The worst part about all of this is they tell me how powerless they feel in the implementation of these changes that impact their jobs, their daily lives, and the functioning of their institution. Secondly, I learned how terrified faculty members are of standing up and pushing back on these issues. Just today, I've spoken with faculty who are distraught because the college has threatened to punish them for putting up posters on their office doors that express support for their union, a union that the state legislature expressly permitted and encouraged. After years of watching staff in various departments be dismissed on short notice, and years of being told that if they have a problem, find the nearest exit sign, faculty are terrified of pushing back against the seemingly chaotic reorganization and dismantling of this institution. I am here expressing my support for this bill and its amendments because it provides a direct, common sense set of solutions that the very apparent issues that faculty have expressed to me need addressing. By ensuring transparency for board meetings, open comment for stakeholders and community members, adequate training for new trustees, and constructive and anonymous feedback, this bill begins the process of restabilizing this institution. With all these changes, we will see a board that is empowered to deliver upon the mission of the college, ensuring student success, organizational excellence, and providing pathways for lifelong learning for the people of Howard County and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kingston. Senator Lamb?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kingston. Since you represent AFT and the prior speaker, Dr. Musio, brought up AFT in the union and what took place with the apparent search and seizures by HCC's security officials, obviously, you know, and maybe if you can speak to this, it would be great. But there are certain protections in place that the state has put in for those employees who are seeking to organize. Do you have any sense whether what took place this morning violated any of those protections?
It seems exceedingly apparent to me that the actions that were taken today by senior leadership is a violation of the National Labor Relations Act, is a violation of concerted activity by these faculty, and has been done expressly to limit union speech on campus. And we're currently pursuing all avenues to rectify the situation.
Okay. Well, if that's the case and it's a violation of the National Labor Relations Act, that is very concerning.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You have other questions? Thank you, Mr. Kingston.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Miss Samario Sullivan.
She is not in the waiting room at this very moment.
Okay. Then our next speaker is Miss Laurie Scott. And she will talk about the governor's budget bill. Ms. Scott, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, Chair Wu and Lamb and members of the committee. My name is Laurie Scott, and I live in Howard County in Clarksville. I'm an advocate and the mother of a child with significant cognitive disabilities, and here tonight to talk about the governor's budget bill and his proposed cuts that negatively impact people with developmental disabilities, their family, and community providers. The current proposal is a budget cut that affects the most vulnerable residents in Howard County who rely on DDA funds to work, play, and live meaningfully in their community. There are about 24,000 Maryland residents that use services or are on the waiting list for developmental disability services. Overall impact for FY25 is a $194 million cut to DD services, and overall impact for FY26 is a total of $457 million. This represents a 22% cut to the DD community for supports and services in FY26. This new DDA administration on board since January of 2024 has been extremely non-collaborative, eliminating already approved items in people's budgets, refusing to allow community providers, self-direction participants, and the coalition to be at the table to have meaningful, productive conversations about the need to cost save. This is significant in that the people closest to the problem should and are willing and able to help solve the problem. Instead, the Secretary of Health and DDA Deputy Secretary have gaslighted the community and continue to paint a picture to the legislator that is far less harmful than what is going to be happening with these proposed cuts. Right now, advocates feel very powerless. These cuts directly affect vulnerable humans, their ability to live in the life that they want, and to be safe in our community. This is not building a $51 million Supreme Court building, boat ramps, athletic lights for fields, and private university capital projects. These are people's lives. Cuts proposed will stop needed supports and services such as direct care to individuals, community development services, camps such as Howard County Parks Therapeutic Recs, day programs, and Howard County paying needed benefits for staff, offering wages that exceed what Target is paying, and I could go on. Clawing back funds that have been taken years to get to our most vulnerable constituents in the state and in the county would be harmful and put our efforts back years. Unfortunately, the budget has increased funding to institutionalizations in Maryland, such as Potomac and Holly Centers, taking us far away from the reason why Olmsted was ever created. No matter what committee you sit on, please do your part to meet with advocates, understand how these cost reductions can be better handled, and how exactly any cut will affect DD individuals and their families. We need all of you to please ask questions and help us ensure a safe and happy, productive lives for people with DD in Howard County and in our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Do we have any questions? Okay, thank you very much for coming to speak. Okay, we're moving to the next speaker, Mrs. Samario Sullivan. Ms. Sullivan, please go ahead. Ms. Sullivan, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello, I don't know if can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't even figure. So forgive me because I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. Oh, here it is. Hi, I'm the director for higher ed organizing. I work for the AFT, and right now we have 7 community colleges in contract negotiations right now. Throughout the state. And what we're experiencing at Howard is different than everywhere else. So I just wanted to say that it's really important for us that we relay the fact that our goal is to work with administration in a collegial manner, right? And really make sure that the students have everything that they need to be successful, as well as, of course, our faculty and also administration. But the way that things have been handled since the union has certified has been lackluster, to say the least. So I just want to speak out as a representative of the AFT and just say that we absolutely support this bill with the amendments, and we're looking forward to reaching an agreement and working with administration to make things better for the faculty so that you all keep the best, right? Let's keep the best faculty that we can in the county that care about the students and not drive them off because of bad leadership. And so we want to work well with people and with the administrators, and we want to work well with the president as well. So I just wanted to make that statement. But yeah, we absolutely support this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Do we have any questions? Okay, thank you. We're moving to the next speaker, Mr. Phil Webster. Mr. Webster, please unmute and go ahead.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Phil Webster from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Columbia, and I'm speaking in favor of State Bill 978. I come before you to ask support for the Cherish Our Communities Act.
Mr. Webster, please unmute and go ahead.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Phil Webster from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation.
You need to unmute your other YouTube.
State Bill 978. I come before you to ask.
I could hear him.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, it all went away for a moment. So I come before you to ask for your support for the Cherish Our Communities Act. Cherish is an acronym for cumulative harms to environmental restoration for improving shared health. The bill is sponsored by our own Senator, Dr. Clarence Lamb, and Delegate Jazz Lewis from PG County. Thank you, Dr. Lamb, for your support. Unitarian Universalism is a faith based on shared values, two of which are justice in human interactions and respect for the interdependence of the web of life. Both of these values are relevant to this legislation. I know several of you, your parent, your children, through our mutual membership in UUCC over the years. I have met others of you or your staff members during visits to our congregation, often asking for our support. Tonight, I'm asking for your support. The Cherish Our Communities Act has been around in one form or another since 2014, over 10 years. It will require adequate environmental impact assessments for new, renewed, and expanded environmental permits to ensure that environmental justice communities do not continue to disproportionately bear the harms of environmental and public health hazards. In 2022, overburdened and underserved communities were officially defined in Maryland law, targeting areas hardest hit by environmental and economic challenges. Also in 2022, Justice 40 language was included in the JCR to identify and provide assistance to overburdened communities, directing at least 40% of the funding from critical programs to community needs. The Maryland EJ screening tool has also been developed to identify census tracts with high environmental justice scores. The Cherish Our Communities Act builds upon this foundation by giving the Department of the Environment the authority to use the EJ score when evaluating new, renewed, and expanded environmental permits. I'm asking Senator Hester and Delegates Terrassa and Ziegler to be champions for this bill, to provide leadership and advocacy in their committees. I'm asking each of you to sign on as co-sponsors to this vital legislation and vote for this legislation when the opportunity arises. While the current federal administration is abandoning overburdened and underserved communities, Maryland must not do the same. The administration has rescinded 2 of President Biden's executive orders that explicitly take environmental justice into account when spending funds from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or the Inflation Reduction Act. Failure to pass this legislation would be unconscionable. Our neighbors in communities such as Curtis Bay and Brandywine are crying out for us to act. The time is now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Do we have any questions? Otherwise, I'm moving to let Chair Senator Lamb. Go ahead with the following speakers.
All right, I think we have 5 speakers left, so bear with us here. Next, we have Monica O'Connor. She's speaking about HB 419. This is the Ratepayer Protection Act. If we can let Ms. O'Connor in the waiting room. All right, thank you, Ms. O'Connor, for joining us. You are live. You can proceed with your testimony. Ms. O'Connor, go ahead.
About what considerations are change the metrics of
Ms. O'Connor, you should close the window or the tab that has the YouTube live stream on it, because we're going to hear an echo out of that.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay, one second. Let me pull up my testimony. Hi, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Monica O'Connor. I'm a resident of Ellicott City. I'm here to ask your support for 2 common sense bills that begin to address the sticker shock many of us are experiencing with our utility bills. The first, HB 417 SB 548, the Ratepayer Protection Act. It's a modest yet urgently needed consumer protection and safety bill that amends the current STRIDE law passed in 2013 to focus on safety and cost effectiveness. The STRIDE law was originally intended to allow gas utilities to add surcharge to customers' monthly bills to ensure accelerated cost recovery for a safe gas system. Unfortunately, as written, the bill incentivizes utilities to invest in building out new costly infrastructure, and it lacks the language to prioritize safety. According to federal data, BG&E's hazardous leaks per year have increased in the last decade, despite STRIDE, escalating from 2,400 in 2011 to over 4,000 in 2023. Starting with the most vulnerable pipes and using a fix-it-first approach when possible is the safest and most cost-effective. But utilities make their highest profits off capital investments, including installing new pipes and equipment like external regulators. Increased capital spending leads to increase in customer delivery rates. So while utilities have spent billions on new gas pipe and equipment, customers are seeing their bills escalate without commensurate benefit. Of all the gas utilities in the state, BG&E is the biggest culprit. Since 2010, BG&E delivery rates have nearly tripled, allowing utility profits to jump from $147 million in 2010 to $485 million in 2023. Shamefully, in 2023, BG&E disconnected services to over 80,000 customers who could not afford to pay these escalating costs. While BG&E, as recently as yesterday, tries to claim increased rates on in power surcharge and spikes in commodity prices, this is misleading. It's delivery costs, which are double the supply costs in the BG&E territory, that are untenable. I generally don't use a lot of gas in my house, but in January I did, and I'm going to use my bill as an example. I used $40 worth of gas, and I was charged more than double, another $88 for the delivery. Of that $88, about $15 were for customer charges, $7.39 was for in power. The remaining $65 was to cover STRIDE. I don't think STRIDE was meant to be a boon for BG&E shareholders, but according to the Office of People's Counsel, without intervention, Maryland gas customers are projected to pay a staggering $40 billion for the STRIDE program over the next 20 years. Gas utilities are required by law to provide safe services. So ultimately, many of us believe that this 2013 law should just be repealed. Short of repeal, the bill requires gas utilities to prioritize safety and to be cost effective. It does this by requiring utilities to use modern leak detection technology, which wasn't available in 2013, and to use a fix-it-first approach instead of replacement when cost-effective. And finally, to provide a 2-year notice for customers before doing work in their home so they have time to plan for a transition to efficient technologies. It's common sense reform, and it's an important step to ensuring customer dollars are spent prudently and will enable the PSC to more effectively rein in excessive capital spending. The second bill aligns with the first, the Better Buildings Act. It's another common sense bill aimed at reducing high gas and electric energy costs. The bill requires that the next generation of Maryland buildings meet their space and water heating needs without the use of fossil fuels. It's smart from the start because transitioning existing homes is challenging. The Better Buildings Act of 2025 also includes language to eliminate existing code bias that favors fossil fuels. It levels the playing field and encourages the adoption of highly efficient equipment such as heat pumps. The bill relies on the latest energy efficient standards that discourage the use of electric resistant heating and includes a provision for solar readiness for buildings under 20 stories to make sure that buildings are smart from the start. All electric buildings have been proven to reduce costs for new construction by thousands of dollars for single-family homes. And importantly, it cuts the lifetime energy consumption by 34% for single-family, multifamily, and commercial buildings. Electrifying new buildings is especially beneficial to low-income residents who pay higher share of their income on energy compared to residents statewide. More than 100 states and local governments have enacted similar laws. Finally, I urge you not to fall for the rhetoric from gas utilities forecasting brownouts and electric utilities, brownouts if we electrify new buildings. New construction accounts for a very small part of Maryland energy needs. New highly efficient technology actually reduces energy consumption. As the climate warms, we need efficient appliances that are effective year-round. Please support colleagues in committee and on the floor and pass these two common sense consumer-friendly bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. O'Connor? Seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. We're going to proceed next to Mr. Ryan Powers. He is here to testify on two bills. The first one is SB 266, which is cross-filed as HB 286. This is an administration bill, local comprehensive planning and state economic growth, resource protection, policy planning, and planning principles. This is out of DHCD. And also here to testify on a second bill, which is HB 38. And that, I believe, is Delegate Moon's bill, school construction, housing, school zones, and adequate public facilities ordinances. I see that Mr. Powers has joined us. Go ahead and proceed.
You can hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, Howard County delegation. Let me put this up here. I'm here today to testify against HB 286, cross-reference Senate Bill 266, and HB 38. HB 286 is titled Local Comprehensive Planning and State Economic Growth, Resource Protection, and Planning Policy, Planning Principles. But what kind of planning principles for land use deliberately leaves out public participation and infrastructure? When these are left out, it's clear this bill is not just about simplifying 12 visions into 8 planning principles. Smart growth is a buzzword used around the county, and I heard it again at HB 286 hearing on Tuesday. I'm concerned because there is no smart growth without taking into consideration the ability of a county or state to handle said growth. We need smart infrastructure more. Ask anybody who has a child in an overcrowded school, sits in congested traffic, or waits 12 hours with their loved ones at the Howard County General Emergency Room. Someone has told me that this bill does not affect local planning processes. If we like APFO, we can keep APFO. But the Department of Planning will use these planning principles to issue an implementation guide for local counties. And this guide does not have to say anything about public participation and infrastructure. Or worse, in fulfillment of other principles in this bill, like number 1, optimizing land use productivity, it might directly worsen adequate public facilities ordinances. Right now, Howard County has an APFO review committee that is examining the balance between overcrowded schools and housing growth. This committee was established by a few lines in HOCO by design, which itself used the 12 planning visions that are currently up for replacement. Do you see where I'm going with this? And why I think it's important to have these ideals at the very start? It's bad enough that the committee is currently exploring a rollback of APFO protections that would allow schools to be overcrowded by, in some cases, 100+ students before development is slowed. It would be even worse not to have any protections at all. This November, that committee held its first public meeting. I want to quote some of the people that testified about how the lack of adequate infrastructure in our schools has allowed the proliferation of over 240 trailers and how that has affected them. Quoting, Kids have to go out to portables in rain and snow without access to their jacket or umbrella because they are in a one-way system for crowd control, one parent wrote in email testimony. Many parents share the same concerns. The heating and AC are another issue. In the warmer months, it is very hot in the classroom. In the cooler months, it is cold in the classroom. This is very unfair to the students and teachers in those trailers. It is also a health issue. Or, my current fifth grader attends an elementary school where he and all of his fifth grade classmates are taught in portables. If nothing improves, fifth graders at our elementary school will continue to be taught in portables over the next decade. Parents also describe overcrowded classrooms. With all those students in the classroom, there are a lot of distractions. My son and daughter are struggling right now due to those distractions. While they had great teachers, they were overworked. Special educators had too large caseloads and teachers were faced with packed classrooms, which increased behavioral challenges and disruptions to learning. And from a related arts elementary school teacher, my first grade classes went from 16 to 31 in just 8 years. And my favorite, their class befriended a raccoon that lives below their temporary building. It likes to scratch the floor above it, and the kids like to leave him candy to enjoy. Again, some say APFO is a local process unaffected by this bill. But if we cannot point to infrastructure as a planning principle, we have a harder time justifying to our county leaders its importance in smart growth decisions. And if public participation is taken away, I have less of a chance in which to convince them. If you think infrastructure protections from overcrowded schools aren't under attack, I want to point you to HB 38, titled School Construction and Housing, School Zones and Adequate Public Facilities Ordinances. This bill will, among other things, limit the amount of time developments can be delayed. Under Howard County's APFO, development can only be delayed 4 years before given the automatic green light, regardless of the conditions of our schools. Other counties have longer waiting periods because it often takes longer than 4 years to build a new school. The specific language is also ambiguous. Quote, a county's adequate public facilities ordinance may not restrict housing development for more than 4 years after enactment. Does this mean the waiting period? Or can it refer to the period after APFO is written? Because in Howard County, the last APFO review was 7 years ago. I think the one before that was at least a decade. While the language certainly needs to be clearer, I also believe the number of years the development can be delayed should have some sort of analysis done to justify the number. Again, I'd go with the time it takes to actually build a school. When the lack of school protections and HB 86 was brought up in a recent PTAC meeting, many members expressed dismay. For most, this was the first time they were hearing about it. Unfortunately, it's hard to keep up with every bill and how it will affect already overcrowded schools. We depend on your votes and upon you to hold such bills as planning principles in HB 38 truly accountable to the concerns of everyday residents, over 57,000 strong in HCPSS and 9,000 staff. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you so much, Mr. Powers. Next, we're going to proceed to Serena Lao. She is here to testify on 2 bills. Actually, I think it's 1 bill, just a cross file. So this is the Maryland Second Look Act, SB 291 and HB 853. I see Ms. Lao has just joined us. You are live, so if you can unmute, you can go ahead and proceed. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am Serena Lao. I'm a longtime resident of Ellicott City. Grew up in Howard County, going to public schools here, and stayed in the state of Maryland for my bachelor's and master's. I also have a loved one who's been incarcerated for 36 years now. I've known him for about 6 years, and through him have learned a lot about the prison system. And so I'm here tonight testifying in support of the Maryland Second Look Act, which is SB 291 and HB 853. This legislation is, first, I want to stress a huge opportunity for cost savings in this year where we're facing the budget deficit. Right now, our state prisons are overpacked and understaffed with people who are serving very long sentences and are aging in prison. And so this legislation really is not a get out of jail free card. I want to make that clear. It would be a look at each individual's case on a case-by-case basis in front of a judge to determine if they are no longer a danger to public safety and have demonstrated sufficient rehabilitation to justify a sentence modification. Right now, a couple of years ago, the Division of Corrections estimated that it costs about $60,000 to house an inmate per year, including medical care, and that cost goes up for those who are part of the aging population, because as we know, they have greater medical needs. Now, that's only one inmate and 1 year, whereas many people who would be eligible for this bill have served decades of time. We know that there are proposed budget cuts to education, to DDA services, and right now we are spending millions of taxpayer dollars on keeping people locked up when that serves no benefit to public safety. And in fact, it is a common sense piece of legislation to improve public safety, because a lot of these people, they unfortunately have committed some very serious crimes in their past, at least 20 years ago. But they are the ones who understand crime the best, and they are the most well-equipped to help our youth out here to veer off a path of destruction. And because of those are serious crimes, yes, there are, of course, victims involved, and we have to be sensitive to them. Under this legislation, victims are given as much agency as possible within the constraints of the system. They can choose to participate or not in these hearings. They can submit a victim impact statement, and for some victims, that can be part of their healing process. And so I would welcome any questions or want to keep this dialogue going for anyone who wants to hear more.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lau. Any questions for this witness? If not, we appreciate your testimony. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Liz Fainer. She is here to testify on the Better Buildings Act, HB 416, the Ratepayer Protection Act, HB 270, and the Data Center Study, HB 398. Ms. Fainer, thank you for joining us. You may proceed. Ms. Fainer, are you there? Ms. Fainer, we have you live. If you're there, you can unmute and go ahead with your testimony. Okay. Why don't we keep her there, and maybe if she comes back off mute, we can let her testify.
Okay, there I am. Sorry, I couldn't get it to unmute for some reason. I need to make this view smaller, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. I'm Liz Fainer in District 13 and a member of HOCO Climate Action, but I'm testifying as a concerned activist about the climate emergency. 2024 was the hottest year in modern history, and we are running out of time. Buildings are the second largest source of climate pollution in Maryland, behind transportation. Building electrification in Howard County has been a high priority for me, and I'm urging you to co-sponsor and support the Better Buildings Act. This act would require new buildings in Maryland to increase energy efficiency, avoid fossil fuels, and be solar and electric ready. Passing this bill would be a significant step towards meeting the state's aggressive climate goals, reducing residents' utility costs while providing a safer and healthier home. Pollution from fossil fuel-powered HVAC and water heaters is responsible for about $1.3 billion in health costs, linked to 3,500 cases of asthma symptoms and 163 premature deaths in 2017 alone. Fossil fuel-powered buildings emit more than 3 times as much health-harming nitrogen oxides as all of Maryland's power plants. Pollution from fossil fuels in residential, commercial, and institutional buildings increased every year from 2017 to 2023. As Bill McKibben says, when you're in a hole, stop digging. New fossil fuel equipment installed in the next few years will continue to harm residents and emit greenhouse gases for decades. All electric new buildings will not tax the grid, as the Brattle Report study has shown. This report looked at the distribution grid and found we have enough capacity, even during peak summer demand, to handle electrification of new buildings. So unless we totally halt construction of new buildings or build them without air conditioning, new buildings with energy efficiency requirement will actually reduce the electrical demand compared with traditional new buildings. So please support HB 937 or 973 and SB 804, the Better Buildings Act, and let's build smart from the start. In addition, please support HB 270, the Data Center Impact Study, which is critically important as the bill requires an analysis of the likely environmental, energy, and economic impacts of Maryland's data centers. The demand on the grid from data centers is expected to be extraordinary. Decisions on permitting data centers are made at the local and county levels, while the impacts affect all Marylanders. Without careful analysis, ratepayers will see skyrocketing costs, while data center companies reap all the benefits. We need to protect ratepayers not only from data centers, but also from the wasteful and outrageous spending by utilities. The current STRIDE program incentivizes utilities to invest in fossil gas infrastructure, supposedly for safety and reliability. Currently, it incentivizes utilities to replace pipes rather than repair them, which is much more costly to ratepayers. BG&E's delivery rates have nearly tripled since 2010, and so has its profits. So please support HB 419, the STRIDE Ratepayer Protection Act, to stop this wasteful spending. Addressing ratepayer costs and grid reliability is critical. The Abundant Affordable Clean Energy Act creates a path to address these issues while providing important protection for Maryland workers. It brings on new clean energy projects that serve Maryland's load requirement within this decade on a least costless basis. It adheres to the state's carbon reduction goals and allows flexibility to respond to potential shifts in future energy markets. So please support HB 398, SB 316, the ACE Act. And finally, the RENEW Act is legislation that will make polluters pay instead of Maryland taxpayers. More extreme weather events are destroying homes and lives in Maryland, as you all well know too well. Fossil fuel companies knew and lied about the climate crisis, and it is time for them to pay for the damages they cause. So please co-sponsor and support HB 128, SB 149, the RENEW Act. And thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Any questions for Ms. Fainer? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. Last witness. We have Camp Monsour, who is no stranger to a lot of members of the delegation, here to testify on a bunch of bills. Aaron, go ahead. Good to see you. Aaron, you should either close or close the window or the tab that you have of the YouTube stream, because we'll hear an echo.
Yep. Sorry, I'm trying to get it off here. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, good evening, Chairman Wu and Chairman Lamb and members of the Howard County delegation. My name is Camp Monsour, and I think all the members know me as either as constituent or for the 6 years that I worked for the General Assembly. You may not know, however, that I am also a Quaker, and I attend Patapsco Friends meeting in Ellicott City. I personally live in District 9A. My meeting house is also located in District 9A, and we have friends throughout Howard County. I'm currently the immigration lead advocate for Quaker Voice of Maryland, which is a faith-based advocacy group dedicated to helping Quakers in Maryland have an effective voice in statewide policy decisions. I believe you have in your testimony packets a list of 12 priority bills that Quaker Voice will be supporting with favorable testimony this session. Given the lateness of the hour and time limitations on our oral testimony, I am going to focus my testimony on identifying our priority bills for you and then sharing a bit more about one of the bills. I am going to name each of them and their bill numbers for the record and for those who may be listening who don't have access to the written testimony so they know which bills we're supporting. So in the category of climate and environmental bills, Quaker Voice Maryland is supporting the Abundant Affordable Clean Energy Act, HB 398 and SB 316, the Renew Act, HB 128, SB 149, the Reclaim Renewable Energy Act, HB 220 and SB 10, and the Maryland Bottle Bill Act, Maryland Bottle Bill, HB 232 and SB 346. We're also supporting several criminal justice bills, including the Geriatric Medical Parole Bill, HB 190 and SB 181, and the Juvenile Court Jurisdiction Bill, SB 422. Also reducing the use of solitary and restrictive housing, which is HB 647 and SB 702. We have two access to housing bills we'd like you to support: the Good Cause Eviction, HB 709 and SB 651, and the Housing for Jobs Act, HB 503 and SB 430. We have three protections for immigrants bills we support. One is the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act, which is HB 1006, and the Maryland Data Privacy Act, SB 977, which I think is sponsored by Senator Lamb. Thank you. And the Ending 287G agreements. So with my remaining time, I wanted to share just a bit more about the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act, which is HB 1006. This bill directs the Attorney General to issue guidance limiting immigration enforcement access to schools, healthcare facilities, places of worship, social services providers, and other essential spaces. It also directs state agencies to develop policies that enforce that guidance. For decades, the United States protected sensitive locations, including houses of worship, from immigration enforcement activities out of a concern that such activities restrain people from receiving essential services and engaging in essential activities, such as worship. Despite these longstanding protections, the Trump administration's DHS has reversed course, and now immigration enforcement operations can be conducted in protected areas like churches and religious ceremonies such as weddings and funerals. A coalition of Quaker meetings filed suit in a Maryland federal court last week to block this change in federal policy. One of the plaintiffs in the suit is Baltimore Yearly Meeting, which is a regional Quaker meeting with membership in Maryland. My meeting, Patapsco Friends Meeting, is part of BYM. And BYM shared that the very threat of government officials wearing ice emblazoned jackets outside of religious services will have a significant impact on our communities and ability to practice our faith. The filed suit in federal court affirms the importance of state-level advocacy in Maryland to support passing the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act during the 2025 General Assembly. Quaker Voice of Maryland will provide testimony and organize its friends to support the emergency bill. The laws and services of the state of Maryland have never been more important to provide protection and support for the people who live here. So thank you for your public service and hard work, and I appreciate your attention and consideration of my testimony. Sorry it's so late.
All right, thank you so much. Any questions for Ms. Monsour? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. Good to see you again. Appreciate the testimony.
Thanks.
She was the last witness, so seeing nothing else from delegation, anything you want to add?
We have bills. We have bills.
Oh,
We have local
sorry.
bond bill. Yeah.
You have LBIs.
Yeah. So for the next on our agenda, LBI, the Islington Adventist Academic Outdoor Education Center. Do we have any questions from delegation on this?
Move approval of the LBIs.
I second.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Jeffrey, did you write it down?
Yeah.
Okay. So any discussion?
My only discussion is to remind people that just because we are approving the LBI doesn't mean it will be funded, because there's severe shortages of funding this year, but it does mean they will be considered for funding if we have any.
Thank you, Delegate Watson, for that reminder. Okay, so since there are no other questions, Mr. Jeffrey, can you call a vote?
Yes. This is a vote on the Atherton Adventist Academy Outdoor Education Center LBI. Chair Wu.
Yes.
Delegate Feldmeyer.
Yes.
Delegate Kazoni.
Yes.
Delegate Hill.
Yes.
Delegate Terrassa.
Yes.
Delegate Watson.
Yes.
Delegate Ziegler.
Yes.
Chair Lamb.
No.
No. Okay. The LBI passes the House.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. So, Senator Lamb, do you have your side? You want to vote on this, or otherwise, I think we're done with tonight's meeting.
We just lost. I guess we can't.
Okay.
We'll call a vote with the Senate delegation tomorrow. There's
I can add it to tomorrow's agenda.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Seeing no further business, Chair Wu, right?
Yeah. So
All right.
everyone, if you're driving home, stay safe.
Yeah, we're adjourned. Stay safe. The ice